And now, go.
Hello, Internet. My name is Brandon Crilly. I'm one of the programming leads for CanCon, Ottawa's annual literary, sci-fi, and fantasy conference. And you are joining us live at the Aurora Awards ceremony here in Ottawa. We are about to get started, so sit back, enjoy as you watch some of the finest authors and creators in sci-fi, fantasy, and horror receive some impressive awards right here at Christchurch Cathedral in Ottawa. Enjoy.
My name is Bilodeau, local author and storyteller, and also co-chair of CanCon. I have the honor of being your master of ceremonies. Your MC this evening. I think that one through. Mistress of the Dark. Mistress of the Dark this evening. We're also welcoming people on Facebook Live. It was supposed to be YouTube Live, but a test this afternoon revealed that wasn't happening. So thank you all. So welcome to Ottawa. We are thrilled to have you here. We haven't had the Aurora Awards since 2013, when several noted things happened. Hayden Trenholm was our wonderful master of ceremonies. Thank you very much. Woo-woo. And it was also right before the Minto closed down their hotel space and became condos. So we closed the venue. Go us! We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land on which we gather is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin people. Thank you for their hospitality.
Woo!
So, we're going to go through things as quickly as we can. But people still have to walk, people still have to talk, and people still have to say thank you. My role will be to push people off the stage who go too long. Now, I ask that you all sign the waivers located under your chair. We would like to thank the Aurora Awards. We thank the membership and the board of the Canadian Science Fiction and Fantasy Association for granting us the honor of hosting this year. We'd also like to thank the City of Ottawa, who is the sponsor for this evening, and World Fantasy Convention 2008 from Calgary, who just generously sent us money. I'm surprised. We like that. If anybody wants to do that, we're always open to it. So a few housekeeping duties. The bar will be open during the ceremony, so feel free to walk to the bar. You are an easy crowd. Keep it up. So you can quietly go to the back and get yourself another drink. Don't be shy. They'll be here until 10. We will not unless we want to be. We're going to try to finish around 8:30, 8:45, just so you know. We'll see how it goes. So to begin off, it's the 39th Aurora Award. Now, a lot of people here are nominees. And before we start to decide who gets the giant pointy but not as deadly as before trophy, I would like to welcome all of the nominees, if you are comfortable doing so, to please stand a moment so that we can all give you a hand of applause. Association, who will come up to give a few words of introduction from the association, as well as present the All of Fame trophies. So thank you, Clint, for taking the stage.
me again. For those of you who came to the end ceremony. We always say that KISPA and the Auroras were established at HalCon in Halifax in 1980. However, KISPA was not established until later that year, and the award, which you can see over there, which looks a lot like a dog with a bad case of snakes, it was not called the Aurora Award. But 1980 is such a nice round number, we're sticking with it. KISPA is a federally registered nonprofit. Don't ever do that. It's not good for you. Since 2011. Responsible for the English language Auroras, the French language Aurora Boreals, and the KISPA Hall of Fame. And the Boreal administers the Aurora Boreals for us. The process for the Auroras is deceptively simple. First, there's the creation of the eligibility list. The work must be by a Canadian and must have been published in the previous year. We've always hoped that we could get the publishers to send us lists of Canadian SF&F authors that they published during the previous year, but alas, we have yet to get them. Using the eligibility list as the basis, we move on to the nominations. Any member of KISPA can nominate. The top 5 works, that is, the 5 getting the most nominations, become the short list used for voting. Because of the occasional tie, the top 5 sometimes becomes the top 6. Or 7. The short list may be voted on, maybe you'll notice, by every member of KISPA. I've often been asked about switching the voting process to a jury process. And I always answer. My answer is always the same. We have a jury process. It's just a bigger jury than usual. Voting for the Auroras is done through a version of proportional representation, single transferable vote. If we have 5 people nominated for an Aurora Award, we put our preference for the best one in order from 1 to 5, plus a 6th category, which is none of the above. Actually, the Canadian people probably could use that kind of thing. The program then crunches the numbers until one person comes out with more than 50% of the votes, and then we throw this party to honor them. The Hall of Fame is decided by a jury. Any member of KISPA can put in a nomination for a Canadian who writes SF and F, or F, I guess he didn't write both, and or is otherwise engaged in the many associated activities of this genre. Think about art, or putting on a convention like this. The Hall of Fame exists to particularly recognize and honor those who have made special contributions in our genre. And on that note, Tanya, would you like to come up? for. And we have 3 a year. And the third one is always a non-writer. Can be an artist, can be a fan organizer, can be a lot of different things. And this guy has been a lot of different things. Our Brian Cameron is the third nominee for this.
Graham was one of the board members on KISRA for many, many years and did an amazing job. He is a fan who does fanzines. Clint says not a writer, he is a writer. I mean, he may not be a professional writer, but he does, I think it's Borealis magazine. He is phenomenal, and this is a great honor for him as a fan and as a publisher.
Thank you very much, Clint. Are you all ready for some awards? The power. Goes through my head. So, this year our convention guest of honor is the amazing Kelly Robson. She's an award-winning short story writer. In 2018, her story, A Human Stain, won the Nebula Award for Best Novelette. And in 2016, her novella, Waters of Versailles, won the Prix Aurora Award. That is very hard to say when you're French-Canadian. She's been a finalist for the Nebula, the World Fantasy, the Theatre Sturgeon, the John W. Campbell, and the Sunburst Award. In 2018, her time travel adventure, God's Monster and the Lucky Peach, debuted to high critical praise. After 22 years in Vancouver, she and her wife now live in downtown Toronto. Laksa, for those of you who don't know that, which you're missing out. Now, we're doing something a little bit different this year. My thought was that we got to invite these wonderful people, including our guest of honor here. And so we're going to give the stage to Kelly for a keynote address so that she can inspire you and lift you up, and we can give her the stage that her words deserve. Welcome, Kelly.
Have you all noticed that you're sitting in a labyrinth? Right under your feet. A labyrinth is an ancient tool of prayer, of coming together with the ineffable. And you are the ineffable. And I, tonight, am your Archbishop of Canterbury. Yes, I am. Please be reverent. Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today in the presence of Charles DeLint. To celebrate Canadian science fiction, fantasy, and horror, which exists in a state of art and literature. Science fiction, fantasy, and horror is not to be denigrated or disregarded, but adored and appreciated reverently and soberly, and sometimes drunkenly. With all of our hearts. Into this estate, we all come now to witness the Aurora Awards. We give thanks for the new trophy design, which is considerably safer than the old trophy. Much less likely to create life-threatening injuries, or to cause the Canadian Air Transport Security Administration to flag winners for The Aurora Award is an outward and visible symbol of the bond we all feel as artists, as creators, as fans, and as true believers in the power of science fiction, fantasy, horror, art, and literature. I am especially excited to have the honor of speaking to you tonight. This is truly the culmination of a lifelong dream. You see, I was once a scared little kid who loved nothing better than books and had a hard time getting a hold of them. Then I was a teenager who was absolutely crazy about science fiction, fantasy, and horror. And like a lot of kids and teens, I was isolated and marginalized. And my love for our genres sustained me, fed me, they nourished me. And then just a few years into adulthood, I met and fell in love with my very own science fiction, fantasy, and horror writing. And I've spent my entire life working to get up here, to earn the right to be your Archbishop of Canterbury. All humans should be so fortunate as to spend our lives with people who love the same things that we do, to work and play in such fertile gardens. And I say fertile because I believe that our genres offer artists the best material for making art. The brightest colors in the widest possible ranges, the ability to do anything, say anything, tackle any question, explore any mystery life has to offer without restriction, without limit. When I was in grade 11, I wrote an essay for English class, which was taught by a teacher who was not friendly to genre or to anything. And it was titled In Defense of Science Fiction and Myself, in which I said basically what I just said a paragraph ago, that science fiction, fantasy, and horror gives us worlds without limit, bounded only by our creativity, our passion, our desire, and our ability to work hard, damn hard, at the things that we love. I knew it when I was 16, and I still know it now. And the only difference is, now I have all of you here with me. I know and love many of you, and those few of you that I don't yet know, I treasure you. Thank you. Thank you all for being part of my SFFH world, which is wonderful. I'm going to wrap up so that we can get to the main event, but I just want to say one more thing. Each of us here, whether we are past Aurora winners or future hopefuls, we're recipients of the finest award imaginable, a community where we can come together with pure, true hearts and active, playful minds to explore the work we love, be inspired by friends new and friends old, and learn from people whose experiences are wider and deeper than our own. We've come here to laugh and to cry and to live life to the fullest, united by our common passion, our uncommon passion for the ineffable. And now, the Aurora Awards.
That was perfect and beautiful. May those words resonate with all of us for a while to come. And thankfully we're recording them so they can. Are you all ready for some awards? Not yet. When I was preparing the slate for these awards, and I thought, hey, at the Academy Awards they also have like musical numbers. And then I thought, hey, I know what? We'll have a musical number. And then I thought, hey, who can we have do a musical number? I did think all of these things through, but perhaps not in that order, because sometimes things go wrong. But for those of you who do not know Kari Maaren, let me have the honor of introducing you to her. She is a writer, a cartoonist, musician, and academic whose first novel, the YA fantasy Weave a Circle Round, was published by Tor Books in 2017. It tied for the 2018 Copper Cylinder Award in the YA category, was a finalist for the Andre Norton Award for Young Adult Science Fiction and Fantasy, and was shortlisted for the Sunburst Award in, of course, the YA category. Kari performs regularly at the Toronto Chi Series and is nominated, in fact, this year for her musical performances. So please help me in welcoming Kari as she sings us a song.
There is a swear word in the song. I apologize ahead of time for that. But it's also an audience participation song. So I'm going to need you all to help me out a little bit. In fact, I'm going to need you to yell. So there is one word that is going to come up in this song a lot. It's actually two words, but they've been squished together into one, and that word is canlit. These people have heard it before. So, and just follow their lead, basically. They know when to yell, so yell when they yell. For those of you in the room who are Americans and have no idea what I'm talking about, Canadian literature is often abbreviated to CanLit. And think about the kind of American literature that you don't want to read because they make you read it in high school, and it's full of symbolism, and every tree is a symbol. We have that in Canada too, and it has lots of weather in it. So, I'm just going to take my belt off. That's a weird thing to do on stage, but it's rubbing against my ukulele. So, let's just do this, and I hope you can kind of hear the ukulele. Our literary magazine is looking for submissions. We hope you will consider sending us a story, though before you do, please notice that we have a few conditions. It is important that you know. Heard that you are fond of spaceships and of conversations between old ghosts and children set on futuristic Mars. These do not fit our guidelines, which have served as the foundations for how we choose our writing stars. We want your canlit, meaningful and gritty. Give us canlit, because ennui is witty, postmodern or historical, with lots of metaphorical and badly categorical. Bad weather that will fit into your canlit. Fulfilling expectations, that is canlit. Stinting up First Nations, we don't want your unrealistic shit. Just fill us up with good canlit. We're running out of stories of Alberta and of farming set around the Great Depression. Those are never stale. I'll point out why protagonists will be completely charming as long as you yourself are male. Outdated gender norms and social indiscretion, and blizzards that are metaphors, and one important pie embodying the housewife's literally blameworthy repression, and also someone's got to die. We want your canlit, meaningful and gritty. Give us canlit, because ennui is witty, postmodern or historical, with lots of metaphorical and patently categorical. Bad weather that will fit into your canlit. Fulfilling expectations, that is canlit. Certain of First Nations, we don't want your unrealistic shit. Just fill us up with good canlit. For Gothic in Ontario, don't go and make it scary. Oh no, Gothic in Ontario should just be kind of twee. Luther man just right of unemployment and a broken hero bent and dead and bruised upon the key. Magic realism's okay if you're from BC. So don't make your story happy, and if it fits a genre, you will find you're out of luck. Unless you're Margaret Atwood and you're not, so take your crappy. When you lie away, you suck. Perhaps our categories may appear a bit restrictive, but we know what sort of fiction makes this country great. Your otherworldly fantasies may read as quite addictive, but can the average scholarly Toronto wasp relate? We want your canlit, meaningful and gritty. Give us canlit, because ennui is witty, postmodern or historical, with lots of metaphorical and patently categorical. Bad weather that will fit until you canlit. Fulfilling expectations, that is canlit. Certain of First Nations, we don't want your unrealistic shit. Just fill us up with good canlit.
so much, Kari. Are you ready? Your lack of trust is not appreciated. I will give you a voice regardless. First up, in the slate of the 2019 Aurora Awards, we will be presenting the fan-related work. To do so, I have the honor of inviting Alan Neal. Alan Neal is host of Ottawa's favorite drive-home show, All in a Day, on CBC Radio 1, which is one of Ottawa's most known and talked about show. Criticism accepted, though it's not always for everyone, Alan. Don't worry about it. We love you. Don't worry about it. In addition to hosting All in a Day, Alan is now a published author, releasing his first children's book, Ava and the Little Folk, in 2012. Alan is also part of our community, a geek in his own right. He was going around the venue's room yesterday, chatting with a bunch of Aurora Awards, and we were featured on his show yesterday. Thank you, Alan. And Alan understands performance both live and on the radio, and the work that goes into them. Alan, if you will join me in the stage.
Woo! Sorry, I know I was probably supposed to go around the ramp, and I've shattered rules, I'm sorry. It was very exciting when I learned that you wanted me to host this award ceremony tonight. No, I learned that was not what you wanted. But then I learned that I was going to be, it was just one award, but still, I was going to be getting an award for having the most fans. And then I learned that was not what I was saying. But that's fine, because I understand the importance of fans. Because I have so many, no. Because as a fan and geek myself, I am fans of probably half of this room. So everyone's a winner. It's not true, there's really only one. But in case you're wondering what fan-related work means, it covers presentations and performances and fan music of all kinds, including the wonderful performer we just heard there, Appa's podcasts, and unpaid art by a Canadian in the previous calendar year. Sometimes artists don't get paid.
Boo!
I'm breaking it here first as a journalist. I wanted to know. It must be done for a related event or publication associated to the science fiction and fantasy genre. That had to be explained? That was important, isn't it? Okay, all right. The 2019 Aurora Award for Best Fan-Related Work, presented by Alan Neal. SM Beiko and Claire C. Marshall for Business BFFs, the podcast. Kari Maaren from the Chi Series Toronto for monthly musical performances. Joshua, are they all up there? And I'm like pausing and be like,
You have to read them.
okay, I
Live stream.
will. What if I get one wrong? This is just going to be embarrassing now. Joshua Pantaloresco for Just Joshing, the podcast. Derek Newman Still for Speculating Canada. And Edward Willett for The World Shapers, the podcast. This would be terribly embarrassing if this all goes wrong now. The 2019 Aurora Award for Best Fan-Related Work is not yet, no, just kidding. It is Edward Willett for The World Shapers, the podcast. Clapping. He's taking his time to soak this all in.
Okay, this is very important. The very first people I have to thank are my wife and daughter. publisher, was there. She's there again tonight, so obviously I need to get her to come and these things. And I thanked a whole bunch of people, and I did not thank my wife and daughter, and Sheila has not let me forget that. 10 years, so I'm hoping that this can finally put that behind us. This is wonderful, and of course, it's a podcast, but the reason that people love it so much isn't because it's my podcast, it's because I've had such amazing guests. Started with people like John Scalzi, Tanya Huff, Sinead, Julie, Robert J. Sawyer, and the most recent one is Susan Forrest, who's here. And it's not just Canadian authors, but there's a lot of Canadian authors. I've had people from Tad Williams, Lee Modison Jr. People are just so willing to talk. And it's all about the creative process and talking about how they create the works that we all love so much. So this is great. Thank you very much.
Congratulations, Ed. Everybody can just step off the stage. I would kill myself. Oh, good. All right. Our next award will be for fan organization. For fan organization, I am very pleased to welcome Julie Cherneda to the stage to present the award. Now, those of you who don't know her, Julie is an extremely well-published author with both science fiction and fantasy works to her name. Finish on that. Please go on. Mage is his 20th novel, Gossamer Mage, if you've read it. 4 books. And she couldn't be more proud to belong to this esteemed publishing family. Now, I took that from her website. I'm not making this up. Julie is always very supportive of the community. She shares her love and her enthusiasm around, and so she's a perfect person to give the Fan Organization Award. Julie.
There are notes, but they're not my notes, so I won't take these notes at all. No, take your notes. Fan Organizational is actually the perfect award for me to give out, and I think I promised Maria I won't cry on stage, so I won't, but I'll blubber later, because these are the people that let us do this. I remember walking at my very first convention and realizing I would actually come home. And I know I was listening to one of the professors speaking this morning, and he felt the same way. He was telling us a wonderful story that he would never tell anyone else, but just meeting and being in this environment that is created by the fans who organize it at great effort and time that they put in. That's what makes it happen. So Fan Organizational is the category for Canadian fans who do the work for us on Canadian events that contribute to our community of science fiction and fantasy. It can be conventions, it can be clubs, it can be other activities. It covers literary, gaming, comics, and media events, and all nominees and events must be run by volunteers who are not paid for their work and rarely even thanked. So make sure you thank everybody and hug them if you can. They like hugs. At least they tell me they do. Because they're going to get hugged. Over the previous calendar year. So, nominated for the 2019 Aurora Awards Best Fan Organizational, not presented by Alan. Sandra Kasturi, chair of the Chiazoturo Reading Series Toronto. Eric Künsken and Marie Bilodeau, co-chairs CanCon Ottawa. Matt Moore, Marie Bilodeau, and Nicole Levine, co-chairs Chiazoturo Reading for Series for Ottawa. Randy McCharles, chair When Words Collide, Calgary. Senator Wickham, chair Creative Ink Festival, Burnaby, BC.
fifth nomination, I think, and each year I've prepared the same speech, and this year I lost it. There's so many people who, like, everybody comes up to Marie and I and says, wow, you guys do so much work, it's like astonishing. And then I say, honestly, you haven't seen the size of our teams or how much we delegate or how much Marie punishes her team or stop touching my team. But we also want to thank not just the people who helped us this year, but we're building on a con that's been around since 1992. We wish to thank the founders, the people who kept it going through the years, and the people who have supported us from 2010 until now, because we've grown from a con of just 90 people in 2010 to this year 5 times that number, where Marie said, we're capping. And, yep.
Not a popular move.
So, I don't want to say anymore.
Could we just ask quickly, if you'll indulge us, the Common volunteers who are in the room to please stand so they too could have...
They should stand up.
For the fan writing category, I am very pleased to welcome somebody else amazing to the stage, Stevie Parton. Stevie Parton is a science fiction writer of short stories and interactive fiction. Her fiction has appeared in venues such as Analog Science Fiction in Fact, On Spec, and Persistent Visions, and anthologies from Bermudan Press and Alliteration Inc. She lives with a robot in the sky above Toronto. Phoebe is both a great writer and a great presence at any event. And her tackling different mediums in writing is always impressive, and someone that we're very proud to feature here as a presenter tonight.
Thank you. Anything worth doing is worth doing for money. That's the 13th Ferengi rule of acquisition. In our life, it's not necessarily so. So much of what we do as readers, creators, and fans is for the love. We know that there are things worth doing because they are worth doing, and because without our passion, they might never be done at all. With fan publications, we enrich the field and enrich each other. From reviews to commentary to ordinary and extraordinary expressions of opinion, fan writing brings us new perspectives, and those are always welcome. And it's in that spirit that it's my great privilege tonight to present the Aurora Award for Best Fan Writing and Publication. This category encompasses all forms of fan unpaid writing, including single articles, letters, and reviews, or the publication of fanzines, newsletters, and other publications. Works can either be in print or online, whose content significantly relates to science fiction or fantasy, done by a Canadian at least once during a calendar year. This category does not cover works that have commercial products for sale or are dedicated to a professional group or person. Be very interested to know why that postscript is there. The nominees are Adios Cowboy by Adam Shafto. Books and Tea, Christina Vasilevsky. Constructing the Future, Derek Newman Still, Uncanny Magazine. Mars vs. Titan, Ron S. Friedman, Quora. She Wrote It, But, revisiting Joanna Russ's How to Suppress Women's Writing 35 years later, Krista D. Ball. Traveling TARDIS, Jen Desmarais, Generic Design. And the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Fan Writing and Publication goes to She Wrote It, But, revisiting Joanna Russ. Yay!
Well, Krista couldn't be here tonight, so she asked Eileen to accept this award. But Eileen couldn't be here tonight. She did send along a little speech. I wish to thank and acknowledge all the women who shared their stories so that I could write this essay. It was not easy for many of them who risked angering publishers and agents. Thank you for your trust in allowing me to share your very important stories of neglect and bias in the industry. I also wish to thank the Fantasy Sub on Reddit, in particular the moderators. They have a thankless job and yet worked tirelessly to support my essays and deep dives into the genre over the years. Thank you very much.
I have been asked to remind the winners, the recipients, that there will be a box available to you, so you don't have to walk home, trip, and decapitate yourself. That's not how it was put, but I feel that was the main message. Also, you all signed the waiver. You all signed the waiver. Remember that. We are now going to move on to the Best Artist category. For the Best Artist category, I am very pleased to introduce Melissa Young-Innes, who writes under Melissa Yee. She is a doctor and widely published author who writes everything from medical mysteries and articles for the Medical Post, from picture books to romance to suspense. She is extremely active on social media and often engages her fans in her journey through publishing, including about cover works and arts. And Melissa, I would be pleased if you would join me on the stage. Thank you.
So much, Maureen. So I'm an emergency doctor and I don't have a lot prepared, but I did want to say how much I honor artists and creators in this world. I feel like whenever we make something, people, especially people outside, end up coming up and saying, well, who's your publisher? What rank are you? How much are you selling? As if that's the only worth of the work that we do. There's no intrinsic value. And so I was very touched when I was asked to present this award, because I feel like making art is a very courageous thing to do in this world. So I salute everybody who's doing it, and I'm happy that the Aurora Awards are recognizing excellence. This year, the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Artist, the nominees are Lily Author, cover art of Dragon Lab for Polar Borealis magazine number 8. Samantha M. Beiko, covers for Laksa Media. James F. Beveridge, cover art for Type Books. Roger Cherneda, cover for Tales from Plexus, Doll Books. Dan O'Driscoll, covers for Van Doren Press. And Lynn Taylor Fonda, cartoons for Amazing Stories magazine. The recipient of the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Artist is Samantha and
Wow, thank you so much. This is an incredible honor, and I wouldn't be up here doing any work in this field if it weren't for people in this room. I got my start in 2010 with ChiZine Publications, and they allowed me to do things for them, which is just hilarious thinking back to it. And now I'm here creating covers for some very incredible works, the work of Laksa Media, the anthologies that they put out. They are anthologies with a purpose in terms of they have like an overarching cause attached to them, and it's again been so incredible to work with them. Lucas has given me so much free reign, and he really actually when I say oh that maybe will work on a cover, he actually listens to me, which is again crazy for a freelancer. And yeah, this is an incredible community. This is an incredible community that puts on this award, and thank you. Jeez.
That there are the covers there, 5 of the 6, that were prepared by one of our volunteers, Lana Cameron, who prepared this lovely display. We'll be back at the convention tomorrow, but if you'd like to have a look afterwards, please feel free to do so. You can open them. Yeah, they're so open. They're kind of surprised. It's not that, yeah. Next, we're going to head to visual presentation. For visual presentation, I'm very pleased to invite Mark Robinson to join me on stage. Mark Robinson is a Canadian adventurer, storm chaser, and meteorologist. Recently named as one of Canada's top 100 explorers by Canadian Geographic, he is also a fellow of the Royal Canadian Geographic Society. I kept that in because I wanted to say fellow one point tonight, so thank you. He's run after tornadoes, he's dangled over volcanoes, he's hurled himself into hurricanes, and is a host of the Weather Network Storm Hunters show. He knows visuals, though he, if you follow him on social media, you can see what amazingness he gets up to. Mark, if you'll come on stage.
Do a quick abridged version of that. I'm the idiot from the Weather Network that goes and stands in front of tornadoes and hurricanes. So when I was thinking about what I was going to say, science fiction and fantasy is so much a medium of the mind. And it's very difficult to try and translate that over to a visual medium. I mean, for me, it's quite easy. I turn around and go, look at that, as a tree goes past my head at 100 kilometers an hour. So for me, it's very easy. But for to translate what you've seen or what you've read into a visual medium is not easy. So my hat is off to the people who do this. And I have to say right now, just really quick, I am surrounded by clever, unbelievable, genius, talented people here. So it's not just the visual artists, everybody else. Okay. So when we talk about this, sorry, try that again. I am no longer able to speak. So best visual presentation, the best science fiction or fantasy movie, television production, stage play, or similar work. This award recognizes excellence in visual presentations. Nominees must be Canadian or determined by the quality of their overall presentation done in the calendar year. That's very important. It's got to be the calendar year. Works will be judged on the acting, writing, direction, cinematography, and production quality. Nominees will mostly be a show's producer, director, or showrunner. So the award will be presented. It goes. Oh, I would help that. Yeah, wouldn't it? Wow. The dog got me up at 5 o'clock in the morning. I'm still trying to wake up. So the first one is Bao, written and directed by Dominik, Pixar Animation Studios. Deadpool 2, written and produced by Reynolds, 20th Century Fox. And it's here. Murdoch Mysteries, 2018 episodes, Peter Mitchell and Christina Jennings, Shaftesbury Films. Travelers, Season 3, Brad Wright, Kari Mudd, John G. Lennox, and Eric McCormick, Peacock Alley Entertainment. Winona Earp, Season 3, Emily Andrus, 724 Films Calgary. I got it right. So. Alright, so the award goes to Deadpool 2, right?
You
said something else, right?
Ryan Reynolds sends his regrets by his silence.
I better look than he is.
Congratulations.
Woo!
Our next award is for Best Related Work Anthologies. I am very pleased to welcome someone who has won this several times and who is well known in the community, and some people might say needs no introduction, but I love introducing him and saying Hayden Trenholm is an award-winning editor, playwright, novelist, and short story writer. He purchased Fonda Press in 2012 and is its managing editor. Hayden has won 5 Aurora Awards, and the pointy, sharp ones, a lot of them too. Thrice for short fiction and twice for editing. It's safe to say that Hayden knows a good story when he sees it. Hayden Trenholm.
It's also why I didn't hop up on the stage like other people, because those days are behind me. I just want to say that this is, in fact, one of my favorite categories, not just because I won it a couple of times, but because this is the category that focuses on the collaborative nature of the literary arts. It's not just the writers, but the editors, the designers, the artists, all come together to produce a product that can then be seen as worthy of an award. So best related work, best science fiction or fantasy literature, literary criticism, book review, CD, critical editions, screenplay. See, it's more than anthologies, but also anthologies or a single author collection, releases a book in English by Canadian published within the calendar year. This category covers all professionally written works that are not covered by the other professional categories. So, the nominees for the 2019 Aurora Award in Best Related Work. By the Light of Camelot, edited by J.R. Campbell and Shannon Allen, Edge. Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction, edited by Dominik, Parisien, and Elsa, Sjunneson-Henry, Uncanny Magazine. Gothic, Strange Tales of Sherlock Holmes, edited by J.R. Campbell and Charles Prepelec. Shades Within Us, Tales of Migrations and Fractured Borders, edited by Susan Forrest and Lucas K. Law, Laksa. Monsters, Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, 200 Years On, edited by Derek Newman Still. And the winner is Disabled People Destroy.
The editors-in-chief of Uncanny magazine, who gave us the chance to work on Disabled People Destroy Science Fiction. We need to thank, you read that part because I can't.
Sorry, I said we don't need a speech, we will win. I know, I'm so sorry. Sorry, I'm trying not to cry, genuinely.
We need to thank Vinci Trotta, the managing editor of Uncanny magazine. We need to thank these people.
Nicolette Barishoff, Estrie Liu, and the reprints editor Judith Tarr, and she already mentioned Lynn and Michael Thomas for allowing us to undertake the project. It was tremendously meaningful. Let me take over.
We need to thank our authors who wrote such incredible work for us that we literally can't imagine the project without them. I need to thank Dominik, who was the best co-editor I could have asked for, because interdependence and disabled support makes work better. Disability is thrown into the margins every single day. And the work that we did for this project was not just for Disabled People Destroy. It was for every disabled person who feels like they have been shoved out of the page, off of the book, into a shadow. We exist. We will exist now. We will exist in the future. We exist with you, beside you, and on every single page. Thank you so much for this honor.
Very quickly as well, in addition to my tremendous thanks to Elsa for all our work together. Anytime that you write anything in terms of disability, it requires a great deal of vulnerability. And yesterday we were having a conversation where we both didn't expect to live beyond 30, and people didn't expect us to live beyond 30. And when it comes to disability, anything in terms of the arts and just in life in general, people don't expect you to live, to thrive, and they particularly don't expect you to be able to tell your own stories. And the importance of that cannot be emphasized enough, because our stories are constantly being told by other people. So having you recognize this particular work for us, for a project that is entirely by disabled people, is a validation of our lives and our art, so thank you.
Thank you for
Congratulations all. Our next category will be poem and song. We have the chance again to feature some great people here. We don't know who will walk away with an award, but we still have the honor of featuring some wonderful presenters, and thank you all so far. Now I have the honor of introducing to you Thérèse Masson-Pierre, who is a writer, an editor, and organizer. She is the poetry editor of the esteemed Augur magazine, is co-host of a poetry night, and co-organizer of a reading series. It is safe to know that her interaction with poetry, both spoken and written, is multi-level in shows in every one of her selected words. So if you'll join me on the stage, please.
Forgive me, I'm a little nervous because this is a big deal. This is a big deal. Thank you, Marie. I'm very honored to be presenting the Aurora Award for Best Poem and Song. As someone who, until a few years ago, never really imagined myself in a space like this, I'm proud and grateful to be able to celebrate these nominees. This category is for a poem or song in English by a Canadian published or performed within that year. This category covers poems and song performances in English. A song includes lyrics and music. A song may be available as a document that includes lyrics, musical notation, as a recording, as a performance, at a fan event, or any combination of these ways. The nominees are Echoes by Shannon Allen, By the Light of Camelot, Edge. By Vanessa Carthy, Shades Within Us, Tales of Migration and Fractured Borders, Laksa. Osiris by Leah Bobbitt, Uncanny Magazine. Trips to Impossible Cities by Sandra Kasturi, Amazing Stories Magazine, Issue 2, Winter 2018. Ursula Le Guin in the Underworld by Sarah Tomey, On Spec, Issue 107, Volume 28. And the recipient of the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Poem Song is... These are hard to open. Ursula Le Guin in the Underworld.
This is the only way I can think of for her to win. Everyone in this room realizes that she should have won a Nobel Prize. Yeah. She should have. But we can give her today an Aurora Award. If you have a glass left, and if you don't, why don't you? Ursula Le Guin.
We're now going to move on to our next category. For the Best Graphic Novel category, I am very pleased to introduce someone whose work you may not be familiar with when it comes to his webcomics, and I'm going to remedy that by telling you all about it. Nathan Frechette has published over a dozen graphic and prose short stories, as well as 5 novels, 3 graphic novels, 2 works of nonfiction, and the online comic Something Required, which I strongly request. Recommend. He does wear many, many hats and does so with kindness and thoughtfulness. So I'm very, very proud to welcome Nathan.
When I was growing up, I was always told, why are you reading graphic novels? You should pick up a real book. I am so delighted to be honoring the winner tonight of the Best Graphic Novel, because graphic novels are not only real books, they're essential tools of accessibility, literacy, and they are just as deep and touching as any other book. Sometimes more so. The Best Graphic Novel is the best science fiction or fantasy graphic novel, single issue of a serial, or an online comic in English by a Canadian published within the calendar year. This category is for published works that are mainly graphical. The nominees can be recognized for the written word, illustration, or color work. The nominees for the 2019 Aurora Award for the Best Graphic Novel is Crash and Burn by Finn Lukulin and Kate Larkin, Asterisk Press. Futility, Orange Planet Horror by Rick Overwater and Cam Hayden, Coffin Hawk Press. It Never Rains by Kari Maaren, a webcomic. Krampus Is My Boyfriend by SM Beiko, webcomic. The Woman World by Aminder Dhaliwal, drawn in Quarterly. And the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Graphic Novel is It Never Rains.
So I didn't do a speech because I didn't expect. I would like to thank my wife and daughter. I would like to thank my family, especially my father and my sister, and to have this in memory of my mother who died a couple of years ago of Alzheimer's. It's also, It Never Rains is a comic about a blind protagonist, and so I would like to add to the disabled people destroying things, me being also a disabled person who sometimes destroys a lot of things, many of them in my own apartment, to say that we do need better representation and more stories about disabled people. So thank you for reading my comic and other people's comics too, especially all the people who used to be on the screen but changed. Thank you very much.
We have 3 categories left. I'd like to thank the presenters for all sticking to their times. That's not permission for the next award. And the next award is short fiction. The next presenter, which again I feel like many people welcomed here to the stage, don't necessarily need an introduction, but I'm going to take one nonetheless. Charles DeLint is a poet, an artist, a songwriter, a writer, a performer and folklorist who has won multiple awards, including being granted the Lifetime Achievement Award by the World Fantasy Organization. He also writes a monthly book review column for the magazine and fantasy of science fiction. He reads a lot, and his stories, both long and short, never fail to enchant. So I'm pleased to welcome Charles to the stage.
Business 35 years or so ago, you'd be hard pressed to find, women being nominated for awards like this. And so I can't tell you how pleased I am that all 5 of the people on this list are fiction or fantasy short fiction in English with fewer than 40,000 words by a Canadian published within the calendar year. This category covers short form fiction in English, such as novelettes, novellas, short stories, and flash fiction. And the nominees are A Hole Full of Truffles by Julie E. Cherneda. Do I tell the whole thing? Tales from Plexus Novelists. By Kate Heartfield, Tor.com. Critical Mass by Liz Westbrook Trenholm, Shades Within Us, Tales of Migrations and Fractured Borders. For a Rich Man to Enter by Susan Forrest, Intergalactic Medicine Show, issue 62. God's Monsters in the Lucky Peach by Kelly Robson, Tor.com publication. And the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Short Fiction goes to God's Monsters.
Exactly the perfect image that I couldn't describe to him. And I'd like to thank you all here for being my people, my family, and such a wonderful, supportive community. Thank you.
Too much of a good thing. And you certainly can never, ever get too much of a great thing. And so needing no further introduction.
This award honors the creators who work in the media where we all come from. The stories we read when we're young shape who we are, and I'm here to honor the amazing writers who are finalists for the Best YA Novel, which is for the Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Novel in English, over 30,000 words, written for young adults by a Canadian, published within the calendar year. A work that is less than 30,000 words and is published as a standalone book can be allowed in this category if the author wishes it. Authors have the option to request that their novel be judged in the adult novel category. The 2019 Aurora Award Best Young Adult Novel finalists are Children of the Bloodlands, The Realms of the Ancient, Book 2 by S.M. Beiko, ECW Press. Crossfire, an exo novel by Fonda, Scholastic Press. by Nathan Burgoyne, Bold Strokes Books. Finding Atlantis by J.M. Dover, Evil Alter Ego Press. Legacy of Light by Sarah Wally, Simon Pulse. The Emerald Cloth by Claire C. Marshall, Fairy Ink Press. The Sign of Faust by Eric Desmarais, Renaissance Press. Timefall by Alison Lohans, Five Rivers Publishing. The 2019 Aurora Award for Best YA Novel is Crossfire, an EXO novel. I know Fonda really well. I'm shocked something weird must have happened.
Excuse me, sorry. I actually have a message from Fonda herself. I am absolutely delighted to be reading this message from Fonda. If this speech is read aloud at the Aurora Awards, I will be astonished as I am honored. Rarely are sequels nominated for awards, and even more rarely do they win. When you write a sequel, you do it for yourself as a storyteller, the fans of the first book, and most likely your publisher in your contract. You work as hard, if not harder, on that second book, fully expecting fewer sales, less recognition, and limited fanfare. I wrote 35,000 words of Crossfire before discarding all of it and starting again because I was determined that the second book would be just as good, if not better, than its predecessor, EXO. By honoring me with this award tonight, you've told me that I succeeded in that goal, and for that you have my deepest appreciation. Thank you to everyone who helped me bring this book into the world, including my agent, Jim McCarthy, my editor, Jody Corbett, and the entire team at Scholastic and Scholastic Canada, in particular, who've spread my books to stores and schools and libraries. I'm sorry I couldn't be there in the room to give this speech in person, and then she goes on to thank me, which is sweet, but I'm on the ballot in the company of 7 other talented YA authors tonight, making the best YA novel the largest category of the 2019 Aurora Awards. There's never been a better and more important time to be writing speculative fiction for teen readers, not just because this category is large and robust and full of literary excellence, but because, now more than ever, we must hope and rely on the imagination and determination of young people to create a better future. If anything I've written has helped nurture this ability, then it has all been worthwhile. Thank you very much from Fonda.
As I just said, we cannot get too much of a good thing, and we can certainly not get too much of a great thing. And so to present the novel category tonight, the final award category of the 2019 Aurora Awards, I am very pleased to welcome back to the stage Tanya Huff, who Tanya has 32 novels and 79 short stories to her name. If you don't know this by now, you've been behind the times, but I'll tell you. Her Blood series was turned into the TV series Blood Ties. She's tackled various genres and stories to keep her writing fresh, and also won her Best Novel Award the last time the Aurora Awards were in Ottawa. And so we couldn't think of anyone better to present the novel category, especially with her just tonight induction into the Hall of Fame. So Tanya, the stage is yours.
to note, that makes it older than some of the people in this room. For a long time, it didn't seem like that was going to happen again. In the very beginning, novels stayed on the Aurora ballot for 2 years because we didn't have the depth of field necessary to just have it stay on for one. This changed some time ago, and I think that we can all agree, recognizing the talent and drive of the people in this room tonight, that it is indeed an honor to be nominated for the Aurora. I wasn't. Had I been nominated, I would not have the honor and privilege of presenting the Aurora to the Best Novel. The Best Novel category is the best science fiction or fantasy novel in English over 40,000 words by a Canadian published within the calendar year. A work that is less than 40,000 words and is published as a standalone book can be allowed in this category if the author wishes it. And the nominations for the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Novel are Armed in Her Fashion by Kate Heartfield, Graveyard Mind by Chadwick Ginther, One of Us by Craig DeLuise, The Quantum Magician by Derek Künsken, They Promised Me the Gun Wasn't Loaded by Jen Allen. And Hit Card by C.L. Pope, Tor.com publication. And the 2019 Aurora Award for Best Novel goes to Armed in Her Fashion.
All of my writing community in Ottawa, it wouldn't be without you. My family, especially Brent and Xavier, my parents, Jen Gould, my fabulous agent, who, when I wrote this book and I said, do you think this is too weird? And she said, let me worry about that. Jenny is fantastic, and she stuck with me through many years of Too Weird, and yeah, she's the best. Speaking of Too Weird, my amazing publishers, Brett and Sandra at ChiZine are such a force of nature, and this book is obviously what They're wonderful. The amazing SM Pico who edited this book. It's wonderful, and when someone was up here earlier and I whispered to my kid, she drew the mace that's in Armed in Her Fashion, and he was very impressed. He's nodding now, he loves that mace. Eric Moore, who did that amazing, striking cover, it was just the cover of my heart. I couldn't believe.
Kate said, I love how cranky she looks.
Yeah, I was like, yes, cranky ladies, that's perfect. I think that, this book is all about the stories of people whose stories have not been told, whose histories have not been told, and I feel like every year we're getting better at doing that as a community, and I'm just so grateful to be here, and thank you also to the voters and to KISFO, which I can't pronounce properly, but that's the best I can do, and thank you to Tanya for everyone. Thank you.
He's found his speech. You will do a dramatic reading a bit later after he's had one beer. Thank you all for your time. This is kind of officially, almost completely the end of the Aurora Awards. But if I may pose on your patience and your clapping power for a little bit more, I would like to note a few people who deserve a few more claps here. I would like to note the volunteer who tirelessly put together this great reception that we hosted for you tonight and got all of it together in her first ever standalone event that she organized from start to finish, and she ran. She's there! Samantha Bouchard, who is now changing the slide. Usually at CanCon, she takes care of it, so you can go and shake her hand if you like. She needs the attention. A few reminders for tonight. Oh, and I'd like to thank Tommy again as well. I think a few of them are around. They handled our bar service and they handled all the little goodies that MPA ate half of. So. I don't see the Reverend here, but Reverend Steve is around, and he ate some hors d'oeuvres and took them. So thank you very much. A few final details. So if the winners and nominees, and I think also the presenters could just kind of stick around and come to the front, there will be some pictures by the CSFFA. And you get your ribbon. We ordered some special ribbons for the winners. So and you can also pick up your box. Locust is here and also would love some pictures of you. A reminder that the annual general meeting for the CSFFA is tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Next year's convention, which is the 40th, will be in Calgary, hosted at Reynolds Collide on the weekend of August the 14th to the 16th. If you're interested in our voting statistics, please see Clifford, who was our Vanna White of the evening. I cannot let you go without reminding you of a few things. This evening, you can stay here until about 10 o'clock. The shuttle ends service at about 9:30. So if you want to take the shuttle back to the Sheraton, it will be running circuits again. This hall will be open until about 9:30, 10 o'clock, so feel free to enjoy a drink. If you'd like to go back to the Sheraton, there is karaoke in the penthouse suite. There is a ChiZine party in 1705 in our con suite. There is a books and beer party by Brook Book Press in 1614. And that's it. That's all I got. Community, and we continue to build them. So thank you all for who you are and for what you try to build, and it's appreciated. Thank you.